Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you're trying to navigate, this modern economy, and just hearing the word saving makes you feel instantly stressed, like maybe you picture stuffing coins into some old piggy bank. Well, you're definitely not alone there. Our sources
Yeah.
show this financial anxiety, especially for younger people. It's everywhere. I mean, we're living with money just seeming to evaporate, right?
Yeah.
Digital money. You've got the doom scrolling, those little ant expenses, gastos, hormiga chipping away, plus all this pressure for those perfect, Instagrammable moments. It just feels like cash vanishes. And honestly, traditional budgeting kind of feels pointless sometimes when the mystery is just your credit card bill. So, what if the answer isn't some complex financial plan or scary spreadsheet?
Hmm.
What if it's a simple but really profound psychological trick, one that comes from Japan? Now, we've maybe heard of Kakebo, that famous budgeting journal, but today we're diving into something related, yeah, but also quite different. It's more of a behavioral approach, often called the envelope method.
That's exactly right. Our mission today is really to cut through all that noise and give you something actionable, like right away. We're doing a deep dive into this Japanese method, which is fundamentally about your behavior. It's about setting things up so discipline becomes almost automatic. We'll break down the core idea, look at how you actually use it now, in our super digital cashless world, and, importantly, show you why it works, using some solid ideas from behavioral economics. And the immediate goal for you listening, it's concrete. We want to lay out the exact steps so you can get the system running in like under 10 minutes. Seriously. Using tools you probably already have. And by using this simple structure, our sources suggest you could realistically start saving, say, 10% to 20% of your income each month, maybe within 3 to 6 months.
Wow, okay, that's a bold promise. Let's unpack this then. We're calling it the envelope method. Now, for people who know a bit about Japanese financial ideas, how is this different from Kakebo? They sound kind of similar.
Yeah, it's a really essential distinction to make. Kakebo, it really focuses intensely on tracking, looking back at what you spent. It's analysis after the fact. The envelope method, though, it's all about pre-commitment. It's action. It's a total mindset shift, really. You're not tracking where the money went. You're telling your money exactly where it needs to go right at the start before it gets a chance to just disappear.
Okay, so lay out the core premise for us. What's the fundamental trick here, the thing that actually makes it work?
The crucial difference is this. The absolute foundation is that you separate your entire income into specific designated categories immediately, like the second it hits your account, that moment. That's when you have the most financial power. You're literally giving each dollar, each euro, its job, its destiny, you could say,
Yeah.
before you spend even 1 cent.
Right. I think we all know that feeling. Paycheck lands, you feel rich for maybe 3 seconds, and then poof, it just melts away. So what's the key rule this method uses to stop that happening?
Well, it directly tackles that reality, doesn't it? That for most of us, there's just never money left over at the end of the month. You can't wait and see what's there to save. So the critical rule, and this works whether you're using actual paper envelopes or digital pods, is that your savings category, that gets filled first. Always first, not last. It's that whole principle of paying yourself first. You're prioritizing your future self by treating savings like any other essential bill, like rent or your mortgage. It has to leave the main pot right away.
Okay, I see the logic there immediately. Get it out of sight, out of mind before you can accidentally spend it on something else. But it sounds almost too simple. Why does this little trick work when, maybe more complicated financial plans sometimes fail?
And this is where it stops being just a kind of life hack
Huh.
and gets grounded in some serious thinking. What we're talking about isn't just a nice little tip. It's got a really solid basis in behavioral economics,
Oh.
the study of how our psychology messes with our money decisions. We're basically using the method to counteract the built-in cognitive biases that stop us being, well, rational long-term financial thinkers. Think about the big names, Nobel laureates like Daniel Kahneman and his prospect theory, or Richard Thaler, who really pushed the idea of the nudge, this Japanese method. It's essentially a really powerful everyday nudge you give yourself.
Okay, let's nail down those specific biases then. The first one you mentioned is just human nature, right? We want the payoff now.
Exactly. That's the present bias. We're just fundamentally wired to want immediate gratification. That quick takeaway, that impulse buy online, we value that stuff way more than some fuzzy future benefit, like, a pension fund or a holiday next year. The future just feels abstract, so we grab what's tangible now.
But if you physically or digitally separate the money, like putting 20 quid in an envelope marked fun, or shifting $500 to an account called Japan Trip, Suddenly, that long-term goal becomes tangible right now. It forces your present self to actually acknowledge your future self, and that dampens the urge for the impulse buy.
And that very act of separation connects directly to the next bias, the endowment effect. Basically, we value things more once we feel we possess them, once they're ours. If you just look at your total bank balance, it all feels kind of interchangeable, right? Just a number. But the moment you move, say, $500 into a specific pot labeled Viage a Japan, well, that money isn't just generic cash anymore. It's been endowed with the identity of that trip. So spending that specific money suddenly feels like you're robbing yourself, robbing your future self of that holiday you already mentally claimed. That creates a powerful psychological friction, a mental hurdle. It's much stronger than just seeing a general number go down in your main banking app.
That is really fascinating, turning the money from just a tool into like a protected asset in your mind. But here's my skeptical thought. Okay, I label an account, trip to Japan. Great, then my car breaks down. Unexpected $1,500 bill. Isn't that psychological friction, that feeling I'm robbing myself exactly what I don't want when there's a real emergency?
That's a really excellent point, and it highlights why the categorization is so vital when you set this up. You absolutely must have categories like emergency fund or maybe fixed cost buffer that act as like a protective shield, the friction we're talking about. It's primarily designed to protect your aspirational funds like the Japan trip pot from your impulsive spending urges, or even just your regular budgeted spending like groceries. For genuine emergencies, that separate, dedicated emergency fund is there. Its purpose is already defined. So you're not robbing your holiday, you're deploying the funds meant for exactly this kind of crisis. The method provides structure, you see, not rigid inflexibility when disaster strikes.
Okay, that distinction makes a lot more sense. Structure, not a straitjacket.
Oh.
Now, let's talk about that friction we've lost. You mentioned a study about the pain of paying. How does this method bring back some of that necessary pain in our, tap and go world?
It's so important because that study from the Journal of Consumer Research, it really showed clearly that paying with actual physical cash, it's psychologically more painful, more immediate. You see the bills leave your hand, it registers, it kind of hurts a bit, and that pain naturally makes you spend less impulsively. The huge problem today is this hyper-digital cashless environment. We just don't feel the money leaving in the same way. So this envelope method, quite cleverly, manages to bring back some of that friction, whether you're doing it digitally or physically. It forces you to take an extra step, an administrative action, moving money out of its protected category before you spend it. Even just doing a quick digital transfer feels more deliberate, more intentional than a completely mindless tap of your card or phone.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical for everyone listening. The application. We live in a world where, let's face it, almost nobody uses cash for everything anymore. That total abstraction of digital money feels like the biggest enemy of the old school analog version. So how does the digital earner, the freelancer, the digital nomad, how do they make this system work effectively?
Adaptation through separation. That's the key. We can quickly picture the purest analog version just to get the core intent right. You use actual envelopes, maybe folders or paper clips, labeled rent, food, transport, fun, and crucially, savings.
Mm.
And the commitment is you only spend what's physically in that specific envelope.
And the digital version. It's straightforward, but yeah, it does need that initial commitment to set it up. Since you can't use physical envelopes, you have to leverage the tools that modern digital banks offer. That usually means opening a couple of free secondary accounts. Lots of digital banks allow this easily. Or even simpler, just use the virtual pots or spaces or vaults features that many banking apps have built in now. And here's the trick, tapping into that endowment effect we talked about, how you name them. Give these digital pots clear, really motivating goals. Don't just call it savings account 2. Call it like emergency buffer, your Europe trip 2025, maybe a new workstation fund. You're giving the money an identity, a purpose, and a psychological boundary.
Exactly. And then this is probably the most powerful step. You take willpower almost completely out of the equation. You automate it. Set up scheduled transfers. Crucially, the first transfer needs to be your savings commitment going into its designated pot. Schedule it for the very day, maybe even the hour, your income usually lands. Money is essentially allocated, sectioned off, before you've even really registered it's fully there.
And we've seen this work incredibly well in the real world, looking at some of the user stories we gathered. Like Anna, 24, works as a community manager in a big city. Her old strategy was basically look at the bank balance at the end of the month and have a mini panic attack about debt.
Right. But now, she automates transferring 15% of her salary straight out, immediately. She just treats that money as if it doesn't exist for daily spending. She told this story about window shopping online, saw this really expensive kind of trendy coat. She's tempted, finger hovering over buy. But she quickly checked her designated fun treats pod, a separate digital space, and saw she only had like 20 euros left for the week in there. Her willpower in that moment, probably near zero. But the structure was solid. She realized the money needed for the coat was sitting safe in her future apartment deposit account. And she actually said, my past self had saved me from a financial mistake, and honestly, probably from buying a pretty ugly coat that I'd hate in 6 months. That separation created the essential pause she needed.
That structure really is everything, isn't it? And then there's Javier, a 28-year-old developer. He sort of treats his finances like a financial side quest, which I love. He has 5 main accounts set up, fixed costs, food, going out, investing, and his big one, PC Gamer Pro. That's his aspirational goal pot. And he genuinely finds watching that PC Gamer Pro account balance tick up, knowing exactly what it's for, way more satisfying than like leveling up in an actual video game. It effectively gamifies the discipline, makes the long-term reward feel more immediate and exciting than just buying some random thing on impulse.
And this discipline works even when money is incredibly tight. Look at Sophia, 26, a master's student living mostly on a small scholarship. She uses the actual physical envelope method because for her, every single euro counts. It's about survival. So when her envelope labeled coffee and social outings is empty, that's it. It is absolutely finished for the month. There's no dipping into her credit card. For her, basic budgeting became this kind of game of survival and strict prioritization. She even set herself a personal challenge. How many days can I go without using food delivery apps, which are a huge drain for students? Her record was 15 days. She said the enforced scarcity, just seeing that empty envelope, forces her to be creative and focus on her studies rather than spending on fleeting comforts.
So if we zoom back out, connecting this to the bigger picture, the benefits really seem to boil down to some major wins for anyone trying to manage money today. It fights back against that digital abstraction, right? Gives every pound or dollar a clear, maybe even emotional job to do. It automates the discipline, which is huge, takes away the need for constant, exhausting willpower. And maybe most importantly, it seems to reduce that background financial anxiety because you instantly have clarity on what you can actually afford and, crucially, what you can't.
Absolutely, that clarity, that certainty is incredibly valuable. However, we really need to touch on the limitations too. For people who are genuinely struggling right now, deeply affected by the cost of living crisis, by inflation, where income just flat out doesn't cover the basic essential costs, well, for them, this method maybe shifts. It becomes less about saving in the traditional sense and more a tool for extreme prioritization, for survival, really. It helps define what must be paid above all else, not just what you hope to save.
That's a really crucial caveat to make. It's not a magic wand if the basic numbers don't add up. And while this method seems like a fantastic first step for getting control of cash flow, it's obviously not the whole picture, is it? It's not a substitute for deeper financial literacy, understanding investing, dealing with debt properly, knowing about taxes. It's like the doorway to financial well-being, maybe, but not the entire house.
Exactly. And that brings us neatly to the core challenge and maybe the provocative thought we can leave you mulling over today. Saving, ultimately, is a marathon, not a sprint. And probably the most common reason people fall off the wagon isn't the lack of a good system. It's often a fading of that initial motivation over the long haul. We know this envelope method provides brilliant structure. It gives you that immediate separation, that helpful friction. But the really interesting question becomes, how do you best sustain it? How can you effectively link this powerful structural method with really clear, highly motivating short and medium-term goals? Things like maybe saving for a specific book you really want or a special weekend away. How do you use those smaller achievable wins to combat the motivation decay that inevitably creeps in when you're trying to save consistently over years or even decades? The structure's there, thanks to the method. But that motivational fire, that needs constant fuel.
That's a great thought to chew on as you, perhaps, set up your own system this month. Remember, the real power seems to lie in creating that immediate structure starting today. So we'll leave you with that adapted quote from our source material. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single, well-labeled envelope.